I'll see you guys in the dark.
This is by far the weirdest experience I have ever had. This is a long post, so bear with me. When I was 6 years old, I had a neighborhood friend named Trevor who was way older than me. Like 6 years older than me, to be exact. I always thought of him like the older brother I never had. My sister was about his age, but she always thought he was weird, so she never hung out with him. In fact, I realized no one in the neighborhood really liked to be around him, but for some reason, I did. Maybe it was because I felt bad that he had no friends, or just for the fact he treated me so nicely like his little sister. I would always tell him, "You're like a brother I wish I had." And he'd reply, "We're more than that." At first I thought he meant best friends, but it turned out it meant something more. About a year later, my sister and I moved with my mom to my grandparents' home because my parents were struggling with their marriage and needed to take a break. That break lasted for about 2 whole years, until my parents finally decided that things were okay between them and we moved back into my old house. When I returned, the kids in the neighborhood were gone, but there was one familiar face I recognized: Trevor. I remember being so excited to see him, and I ran to hug him, but he placed his hand in front of himself as if to halt me. I stopped and felt confused. I thought maybe he didn't recognize me, because I was now 10 years old, taller, and my hair was much longer. I began telling him that it was me, and that I was back, and that I missed him so much. He looked at me with anger plastered on his face and said something like, "Why did you leave me?" I don't know if things could ever be the same again. I tried explaining to him what happened, but he would interrupt me with, "You're a bad liar. I know you ran off with someone else." I was even more confused and promised him I didn't. At the time, I never thought anything weird about it, because I was so young and just really wanted my friend back. He wouldn't talk to me for a few days, until he finally forgave me. We continued our adventures and played together like old times. But there were some things that did change. Trevor was now a freshman in high school, and he would always bring up stuff he learned in health class, like the male and female anatomy. He would show me pictures of a penis and vagina that was from his textbook, and would teach me about them. I kind of knew what they were, but had no idea what a penis looked like. And no offense, men, but I thought it was the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. I would tell him I didn't want to see those pictures anymore, but he kept saying that I needed to learn for later on. Later, he would begin telling me about sexual intercourse and how it was done. I was really annoyed and let him know that by raising my voice to him, he finally stopped schooling me and things went back to normal. Fast forward 2 years. I was 12 years old now and in 6th grade. I felt so mature and like a woman now that I had hit puberty. I made a lot of new friends, but they were just school friends. I would always come to see Trevor, who was now 17. I was beginning to notice how strange he was when he kept wanting to play house with me. I didn't want to because I felt too mature to play childish games anymore. He would always beg me and beg me to play one last time, so I gave in. He asked me if I had started my cycle yet, and since we knew each other for so long and was comfortable with him, I told him yes. He would continue to ask me strange questions about if I had pubic hair and what size bra I wore. I would fake laugh it off and tell him that it was too nosy. So we were about to play our usual house when he decided to change things up by pretending that we were a couple about to get married. He made us dress up in formal attire and literally did everything that happened at a wedding. He even had fake rings to go along with it and sealed our marriage with a peck on the cheek. And whenever I tried to take the ring off, he would get mad and tell me that it was a gift and that it would be rude of me not to wear it every day. I kept the ring on around him, but would take it off whenever I wasn't. Months went by, and I continued to notice how much weirder Trevor was, and I especially noticed how much more sexual he had become. I even had to ask him to leave my 13th birthday party because of how sexual he was acting with my other friends. Plus, he would constantly tell them that I was his wife and we had rings to prove it. I would tell them that it was our friendship ring, to which he was irritated by. Months later, I came home from school and was surprised to discover a bouquet of flowers and a card on top of my dresser. In the card read something like, "Happy anniversary. Can't believe it's been a year already. Yours truly, Trevor." I was so annoyed that he still played out the "we were married" fantasy. I was mad at my parents for letting him into my room without my permission. My parents told me that they never let him into my room. In fact, they never even saw him. I was creeped out. I would try my best to avoid Trevor and tell him that I had a lot of homework. When we did hang out, he would make me feel uncomfortable with his comments, and he always tried to make me feel guilty for not getting him an anniversary gift. I got even more creeped out when he would say, "You know, you never really got to finish our wedding yet. We still have our honeymoon left." His creepiness got to the point where he could call me at ungodly hours in the night to tell me how much he appreciated me, or just to say hello. I ended up ignoring his calls and put my phone on silent. Once I did that, he would literally show up at my bedroom window and tap on it until I would wake up. My sister would sometimes hear him and would tell him to go away if he didn't want her to call the cops. He stopped coming around, or at least I thought he did. I would start to notice things in my room not the way they were before. For example, my bed covers would be messed up when I knew for a fact that I made my bed before I left for school. The decorations in my room would be placed in different locations or would vanish. I blamed my sister for those things, but she swore it wasn't her. Things got even more strange with Trevor, and I no longer enjoyed his presence anymore. But one day, everything changed, and I never saw him again. It was like he vanished. One day he was a creep, and the next he was just gone. I asked my parents if they knew where he had gone, and they said that he left to go live with his uncle or something in Illinois. I was so relieved to know he was out of my life. As years passed and I graduated high school, I never saw Trevor. I would sometimes see his mom outside, but she would never make eye contact with me. In fact, I noticed that she looked kind of nervous when she saw me. I never really knew Trevor's mom. She was always in her room when I would go to their house. I barely could get a full sentence out of her. Trevor always said she was super shy. I visited home for summer after finishing my first year of college. I was extremely happy to be home in my old room, which was basically a guest room now that I was gone. I was going through old stuff of mine my mom had packed into boxes when I noticed the ring that Trevor had given me. I picked it up and showed it to my mom, telling her about the odd time Trevor made me marry him, etc., and how weird that he left without saying goodbye when he was mad at me for leaving all those years ago. He was such a hypocrite, I said. When I mentioned him, the look of concern was apparent on her face. I asked her what was wrong, and that was when she told me the truth about what happened to Trevor. Apparently, while we were all asleep, my father woke up to some noise. He waved it off as my sister, or me just using the restroom or something, and tried going back to sleep. Then he began hearing different noises. He said it sounded like someone was crying. He thought one of us was having a nightmare and got up to go check on us. He goes to check on my sister when he noticed the sound was coming from my bedroom. He was using his cell phone as light, and when he was close enough to see into my whole room, what he saw shocked and angered him. There, in all of his naked glory, was Trevor staring down at me as I slept. Those weren't cries my dad heard. Those were Trevor's moans from him touching himself. My dad says, "What the fuck?" and begins marching closer to my room, but Trevor hears him and runs out of there. By this time, my mom was awake because she wanted to know what was going on. My dad told her to stay inside while he went to Trevor's house to beat the life out of him. Of course he didn't. His mom begged him not to and said that it wasn't his fault and that he had a mental illness. Apparently, Trevor kept repeating that he and I were married and that he was just trying to consummate our marriage. That really sickened and pissed my dad off. My dad threatened him by saying if he ever saw his face again, that he would kill him. and from that day on, we never saw him again. To this day, I still do not know where he went. Hopefully, his mom got him some help, because he definitely needed it after what I experienced and from what my mom told me. It gives me the shivers and really disturbs me. So, Trevor, let's not meet, and I want a divorce. This story may not be as drastic as some of the other ones on this sub, but I will post it anyway. About a few years ago, my parents had to go to a wedding. The wedding was on a farm, so they had some sort of equipment and products of the farm still lying about. That'll be relevant later on in the story. When we got there was only 2 kids, a girl and her brother. My younger sister, who was more than sociable, quickly made friends with the girl. As for me, I didn't plan the same as my sister. The ceremony happened normally. Wedding things had carried on, of course. The dancing part of the wedding came around, and I went to go find my sister. She didn't show up for the toast or anything like that, so I assumed that she was playing with her newfound friend. I searched around the main wedding area and didn't find her, so I went to the hay bales by the parking area. And not to my surprise, she was there, jumping around on the hay bales with her newfound friend and her brother. As being in my pre-teens, I was bored, so I decided to join them. Things were pretty normal at first, but things quickly took a turn for the wrong. It started off minor. The brother of the 2 gradually started challenging me in almost every little thing. Like, "Oh, I bet you can't jump from the hay bale to that other one, or you won't jump from there, you'd hurt yourself." It was almost like he was testing me. His sentences that he spoke slowly moved away from challenges to how many people he had sent to the hospital and beat up. My sister, being a few years younger than me, was completely oblivious onto what he was doing. His threats soon escalated so much to where he threatened to beat me to death with a wrench. After hearing that, I told my sister that we needed to get the hell out of there, and we did, without them even noticing. Once we were back at the safety of the adults, I explained the situation to my parents and my sister. My parents, already a little tipsy, told me it was nothing to worry about. The brother didn't bother any of us until later, but his sister was just getting started. She started following my sister around like a dog, telling her, "It's okay if we're not friends. I just want to know what's going on." My sister repeatedly told her to go away, but she didn't listen. It was only until she walked up to her and said, "I want nothing to do with you or your brother, so leave us alone." Then she just left us alone. We had like an hour and a half before we encountered them again. We were just getting ready to leave when I ran into the brother and the sister. The sister was standing behind her brother while he was holding a knife ready to strike. He held it up, and before he could lay the hit down, I ran. Faster than I had ever ran before. I ran back to my parents, and luckily, for my safety, we were leaving. I made sure no one followed us home that night. The thing is, if he became a serial killer, I would never know because I never did catch his name. The kid who almost cut my life short at a wedding. Let's not meet again. My wedding was set for September 1st. I checked every weather report for the area going back 5 years. It had not rained on that date for all of the 5 years. Just in case, I decided to have my wedding at a golf course inside the ballroom. We had a bouncy house planned for the kids. My husband was in the military, so he was going to have a sword ceremony as we ran out to our car. We had family and friends from Italy, China, the Philippines, and Romania fly in for our wedding in Salt Lake City. It all went to shit when it began to rain. We canceled the bouncy house on the way to the venue, and we're thanking our lucky stars we had planned on having it inside. Well, We were halfway through dinner when it began to hail. Hail the size of golf balls fell and dented the cars, cracked windshields, and brought everyone on the patio inside. We were in the middle of cutting the cake when the cops came into the venue and had to evacuate our wedding because there were flash floods. Everyone dashed to their cars and had to go around the opposite side of the entire lake. The golf course was on because the flash floods had wiped out the roads. We had to pick up multiple people who were broken down on the side of the road because they didn't have gas in their damn cars. And there were absolutely no gas stations on that side of the lake. Oh, and to top it all off, my ex-boyfriend showed up to crash my wedding and have sex with my bridesmaids in the venue bathroom before we got kicked out. The venue flooded a few hours after our evacuation. Cheers to the most memorable wedding ever. Mine, of course.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.